So today's show is a show I've been thinking about doing for quite a while, but honestly, I feel sometimes like I'm beating my head against the wall with this particular topic, but still, I think it's an important topic. And more than anything, it's just something I need to get out of my head. So here we go. Hi, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill. This is the show where, at least usually, we try and get inside the mind of a great photographer by taking a closer look behind one of their shots. But this show's going to be a little bit different. This show, so that you know, with all my shows, you can go to the website behindtheshot.tv. And at that website, you can find a blog post related to this episode. Any links that we mention are there. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, same thing on YouTube. In the description down below the like and subscribe buttons, you will find any links that we mention, links to my guests, and this is the same on any show that I do. And on YouTube, where appropriate, I add chapter markers. Now, with this show, I don't know how I'll be able to divide up a lot of chapters, but I will do as best as I can. So feel free. You don't have to sit through the intro. If you want to skip that, get to the guests, use the chapter markers as you need. So let's get into this because this is going to be an interesting one. As I mentioned in the intro, this is a show that I've been thinking about doing for quite a while. It's something I believe is an important subject for all photographers, new and veteran music photographers. And even if you're not a music photographer, I think this subject might be A, of interest to you, and B, it might just help you better negotiate pricing, better negotiate contracts or agreements that you're getting into. So if you're not a music photographer and we're talking about something and approaching it from the point of view of concert photography, don't hit the button and change the channel because I think A, again, you might find this interesting, and B, it might benefit you. I do have a few guests. They're sitting in the green room. They're watching this. They're listening. But before I bring them in, I want to kind of lay a baseline, go through some basic notes. First of all, none of us are lawyers. If you've got a contract or an agreement and you've got questions on it, contact an attorney near you. If it's copyright related, don't contact your friend who's a real estate attorney and took an IP class in law school. Contact a local IP attorney if you need advice on intellectual property. I have very strong opinions on concert photo releases. And luckily, this is my show, so I get to let my point of view come through. But that said, my podcast, and for those of you watching on YouTube, this is mainly a podcast available in audio or video format wherever you get your podcasts. And then I also put the video on YouTube. If you are watching this and you are not a concert photographer, that's okay, right? This is not a music photography podcast. And because of that, many of my regular listeners and viewers, I've got whatever, 22,000 people subscribed on YouTube. Most of you are not concert photographers. So you may not even know what it is we're talking about, what a photo release is. So I want to start there, lay that baseline, and then I'll bring the guests in. Be aware, by the way, this is not a workshop. So if you want to leave something in the comments, if you guys didn't say this, please feel free. But we're not going to go, crazy deep. Everything we talk about is going to have an exception. I'm not going to take the time to do an exception for everything. But I want to be sure that we all know what we're talking about. So first of all, in my opinion, and this will be interesting to see if the other two people agree with me on this. What's a photo release? A photo release is an agreement between you, the photographer, and the artist, or whenever I say the artist, I mean the artist camp, usually their management, their PR, or something like that. It's conditions that you have to agree to before that artist camp will approve your credentials. I do hear people refer to these as photo contracts, and I usually avoid that, but for sake of this conversation, we'll consider it interchangeable. Most of these have a title on the top that say photo release, not photo contract. A contract is usually something you negotiate with somebody. You both agree, you both sign. And I actually had somebody say to me the other day, it's weird that we never get their signature on these. Well, that's because it's not really a contract, okay? This is an agreement. This is one party setting rules on how, when, where you can photograph their artist, and only you sign it agreeing to those terms. So why do these things exist? Again, my opinion. Artists are their own brand, right? Taylor Swift is a person and a singer, and like a lot of other singers, but Taylor is a brand. I'm just throwing one artist out. Like any brand, they want to control their image. I totally get that, right? So they put these restrictions on how you shoot a show, how you cover a show, where you can shoot from, and what you can do with an image. And I break these things into 4 different categories. First of all, no release. If you don't sign a release, there are no stated restrictions on what you can do with the shots. You'll usually be restricted to 3 from the pit, no flash, or a front of house soundboard shoot. But there's no stated restrictions. It doesn't mean there aren't any, right? If you're going to use those photos in a commercial way, you still need a model release. These are not model releases. Editorial releases is what I call the next category, which to me, kind of those unwritten rules in the no release, they just take the time to state them. They state what technically already exists in law, no commercial use, no printing t-shirts. They may also restrict that you can only use these on your editorial outlet site. They may have a couple other restrictions. They're generally minor. Don't generally have a problem with these. I have a problem with all of them, but beside the point. Next one up is a conditional release. This one is where they put rather strict conditions on. They may say you can only use the images on the original site. You can't even use them in your portfolio. They may give a time limit. You can only use them for a year. You can only use them one time. Or they may require pre-approval of images, which we're going to get into with David, the guy who's got media opinions on this one when we get into that. The last one is a rights grab release. Now, with a rights grab release, I want to be clear. It can mean taking your copyright, but it can also simply mean equivalent restrictions that effectively mean they're taking your copyright without explicitly taking it. They may simply say, you're giving the artist a full, this is Pat Benatar, I'm looking at you. They may simply say, we're taking a full worldwide commercial transferable license in perpetuity without paying you. And at the same time, you can't use them for anything. So while they may not say you're transferring copyright, this is work for hire, it's effectively to you the same. Now, there are all kinds of issues that I have with releases like this. ASMP, which is the American Society of Media Professionals, actually did a post on this, 2003, so what, last year? It's called Predatory Contract Clauses, the Music Edition. And this is a great read. I will put a link to this in the show notes. But here's the point of this. I'm not here to judge anybody. You need to do what's right for you. I just think it's important that we have this conversation, that we have this discussion about changing what I think most people's default is. Show up at a show, sign the contract, even if it's a predatory photo release, and not even read it. I mean, I would argue, and I've seen people do this, by the way, sign them and not read them. You would hopefully not teach your kids to sign anything legal without reading it. So I just want to kind of change some of the defaults that we have in our mind and at least get the industry as a whole to start thinking about this a little different. So let's bring in the panel. Again, I was originally going to do this show alone, but I was afraid it was going to come off as a rant. I put out a call on Instagram. I had a bunch of people answer. I picked 2 of them. One of them that is a really good friend of mine that I've known for a long time. And another one is somebody I've known online, but have actually never met until today. So first of all, I want to bring in my my buddy David Bergman, Canon Explorer of Light. David, how are you?
Hey, Steve. Good. Thanks for having me. This is a good topic. I'm excited to go over this one with you.
And it's funny, and Marie's on here too. Marie, I'll introduce you in a second, but it's funny because David and I, when I asked him to do this, I texted him and said, can you chat? And I kid you not, we spent 30 minutes having this exact same conversation going, we should save this. We should save this. Next
Exactly.
up, Montreal-based music photographer. And Marie, if I butcher your name, I've practiced it for a day. Marie Demeire.
You got it.
Demeire.
Not Demeire.
Marie,
Demeire, you had it.
okay, perfect. And you and I have followed each other online for a long time. For those that don't know you, you go online as Marie Goes to Shows, which I'm sorry, but that's brilliant branding. I love that. So thank you for being here as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I could talk about releases for hours, so I'm going to have to contain myself so we don't go crazy. But yes, very excited.
Yeah, it's funny when you get music photographers in a room talking about either gear or weird stuff that only we have to deal with. For those of the people out there that don't know the 2 of you, rather than me try introducing you, let's just give a quick helicopter view. First of all, David, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. I've been shooting for 30 plus years now. I started when I was 5, give or take. That's a joke, by the way. But and yeah, these days I'm mostly a tour photographer. I'm on tour with Luke Combs. I'm his official tour photographer. Before that, I was with Bon Jovi for a number of years. Before that, I was with Sports Illustrated. Before that, I was a newspaper photographer at the Miami Herald. So, and I've freelanced a lot throughout that time as well. So I guess I've been around the block a few times. I live in New York City, and this is how I make my living as a full-time photographer.
And the reason I'm glad that I was able to get you on is partially that Miami Herald background, because that's media, and I'm really approaching this from media, because tour photographers have different contracts. That's a different business arrangement, completely separate from I'm shooting for an outlet. I'm shooting for some, sort of media coverage, news coverage, editorial coverage, and yet you still want me to give the work I shot for one client to another client. Your Italy trip I want to talk about really quick, because you did shoot from the pit for a long time. That's on hiatus right now. I did your shoot from the pit workshop. Great workshop, by the way. But nice. Then you have a new workshop coming up. Tell us about your trip to Italy.
Yeah, appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, this is through Trova Trip, and they're a pretty great organization that puts together these group trips for like YouTubers and influencers and people like that. So primarily, it's kind of a vacation, but obviously for what I do for a living, the people who are going to join me, many of them are photographers interested in photography. So we're going to the Italian Riviera for a week, 7 days. We're all going to be together. We're going to eat together. We're going to drink together. We're going to explore the Riviera. I will organize on one day an actual workshop where I think what I'm going to do is bring in a local band, and we're going to do portraits, and maybe we'll get to shoot them in concert a little bit at a local club or something. And then the rest of the time, we're just going to be together, hanging out in Italy. And of course, we'll all have our cameras, and we'll be shooting a lot of pictures as well. So it's going to be a super fun trip. I do have some slots open, so I do appreciate you mentioning that. I don't know if you're going to put a link in the description or how that goes, but yeah.
I will definitely put a link in the description, and I'm going to inject this not because I'm your friend, purely from a photography point of view. And people are going to think I'm saying it just because you're a friend, and there's nothing I can do about that. I paid. Like, I know David. I didn't say to David, can I do your workshop for free on Shoot from the Pit? I paid for Shoot from the Pit, because if I can't learn from a guy who's got 13 Sports Illustrated covers, has shot the Olympics, has shot for, Bon Jovi and Luke Combs and Miami Herald. If I can't learn from somebody like that, then I'm an idiot, basically. So it was well worth every dime. Again, this is not totally a photo workshop. It's a vacation with photography included and a trip with David. David's a blast to hang out with, so highly recommended. So, Marie,
thank you.
People who don't know you, share.
Yeah. Hi, I mean, for starters, now I'm itching for a vacation on the Italian Riviera. So just so you know.
Come on out, it'll be a blast.
There you go. Hi. So I'm Marie, based in Montreal, Canada. Definitely less of an extensive resume. I've been doing music photography and very much exclusively concerts, almost exclusively for media for about 7 years now. All things small clubs, arenas, festival, local artists, international, like a little bit all over the map. But the constant being always from a media standpoint. So I eat releases for like lunch, breakfast, and dinner pretty much.
Okay. So that's perfect. And part of the reason I'm glad that you're on here, David brings decades of experience. You bring 7 years of experience, and I'm just here. But I think specifically in this conversation, actually, I think it's really interesting that we're going to have photography-wise generational differences from people who have only shot for the last 7 years and people who shot on film, right? There's going to be some interesting differences, I think, here, but maybe not. And part of me hopes not, in a way. I already explained how I look at releases, my kind of helicopter view of how I divide them, and it helps me decide, is it worth signing this at all, right? If I were ever to sign one, under what conditions might I? I want to know helicopter view first, and then we'll drill down where you guys kind of stand generally on releases. So Marie, why don't you go first? What are your thoughts on releases in general?
Yeah, I think like the four like different tiers that you talked about, that's pretty much how I see them as well, of like no release ideal, full rights grab, and that kind of in the middle. And I think that in the middle, editorial only, for me, I see it as fair. Like we don't have like we're not entitled full access to artists, right? So if they want to put their conditions, as long as they're fair, it makes sense and it's fine. But then as we drill down into perpetual licenses and rights that are being grabbed or preventing you from doing things with the photos, I think that's where for me I draw the line in the sand. So yeah, I think I'm happy to go down more into the why, and like I've signed some releases and what cases, was it acceptable to me? But that's, I think, my very much top level view on them.
David, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm a little more brutal about it, and yes, there may be some generational differences here because I mean I have freelanced in the last 10 years or so, so I've done some of that, but yes, most of my full-time media experience was a long time ago. However, I see this as like the lobster in the boiling water, right? And I think slowly but surely these things have become industry standard, right? And so whereas I think I personally don't think any release is really acceptable because if you're coming in to cover a show from an outside perspective, you're covering it like a news event, right? If they don't want news coverage, if they don't want coverage of their event, don't credential photography. I'm okay with that. If you don't want news there, you don't want press there, if you don't want pictures, you don't want coverage, fine, don't credential photographers. If you want coverage, then you have to obviously give the photographers the access to do their job because it isn't a private place. But at the same time, but you can't, there's no other industry where this would happen, where you would never say, come cover the Super Bowl, but you can only, post pictures that we approve of, and you can only use them here and you can only use them there. It doesn't happen that way, right? Because you're coming in to cover it as a member of the quote press. And I know we can drill down into what that means now in today's world versus the old days. But I just don't think they should exist at all. And I think we've gotten to the point where it's become somewhat accepted to be, well, this one isn't that bad. And, I'm curious about the laws in Canada, how they're different from the US, but those editorial contracts aren't necessary at all because that's already the law as far as commercial versus editorial. But even restricting editorial to one publication, there's no reason to shoot that show because then unless you're getting paid a lot of money to never be able to use that picture again for anything, you have no idea what that stuff's going to be worth in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. You just have no idea. Go and I know you want top level, but we're going to, just to give you an idea where I come from, there's still some publications that exist. You can go to the grocery store and you see, a Time magazine commemorative of the life of Princess Diana or something like that, right? These things still exist. And they have pictures in there that were taken a long time ago. And at the time, maybe they weren't that big a deal, right? But when she's gone and there's a big news story or there's some kind of event, they need pictures of that stuff. And if you have that archive, that's how you make a living. We generally don't get paid enough per assignment to make a full-time living doing this, right? So you have to be able to use those pictures again. Now, I know you can't use them in the US. You can't use them commercially. You can't print T-shirts. You can't sell posters. There are distinctions. That's copyright law. That's already set in place. You don't need to sign anything to agree to that. And any photographer who's covering a show should know the law and know what they can do and what they can't do. We can go down the rabbit hole, but that's generally where I fall on this.
And that wraps it up for today, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Because, okay, so here's the thing. I said this was going to be me ranting originally, and it wasn't going to be a rant. I was going to be calm, but it was going to be strongly stating my opinion. And David kind of just said everything I had. And I started taking notes, and at one point went, well, screw that. I'm going to be writing a book because there's so many things I want to follow up on. And the first one I want to follow up on is, to me, the system is a barter already, right? You are an artist, and the idea of us covering your show and writing about it, and I don't care if it's Rolling Stone or John's music blog, The idea is you want us to post a review of your show because you're doing a tour that's going to last for 30 days, and you want us to cover that show and get people in the next city to buy tickets, or the next tour to buy tickets, or people to go, yeah, next time Foo Fighters are in town, based on this, I don't want to miss it next time that they're in town. It's a trade system. We cover you and you approve us or not. If we don't have the coverage that you want, for example, I'd never get credentialed for Taylor Swift. I work for rock radio. I generally photograph for rock radio. I'm not going to reach their audience. I understand they're not going to credential me. I had The Who turn me down. And I literally heard back from Live Nation and said, the guy actually said to me, "You're radio. Why do you need photos? Like, nobody has a blog. Come on." But the thing is, there's already a trade system. We cover you. We give you the exposure that you need. We're working for a client. Whether we're paid or not for working for that blog or the Rolling Stones is none of your business or concern. We're shooting for a client. Our shots belong to either us or, under certain conditions, perhaps the person that we're shooting for, the outlet that we're shooting for. For you to put restrictions on that, I have a problem with. Social Distortion had pre-approval shots. I thought to myself, you're Social Distortion. Like, you're punk. And you're worried about what you look like in writing, that I have to send you shots by the next morning for you to approve, and it takes you 7 days to approve them. For media coverage, if I'm shooting for a newspaper, I'm not going to publish this 7 days from now. Like, that's ludicrous at that point. And for you to require those approvals, country artists do it all the time. If they're worried about what they look like, they make you shoot from front of house so that you get lens compression and distance and you don't look so old or wrinkled or whatever it is you're worried about. I don't, pre-approval stuff really, really bothers me. And then for the limits that they place. I shot for house. I do a lot of house shooting, and I shot for a casino here. I was their house photographer, but I owned my shots. When they interviewed me, they said to me, "We own all the pictures." I said, "That's fine. You can own all the pictures, just not for that price." And they said to me, "What do you need the pictures for?" I said, "Well, I can use them in my portfolio. I can post them on social without worry. I can sell fine art if I want to. And most importantly, if an artist comes back to me, they license them from me, not you." Now, I'm stupid. I give my clients, with every job I give, I have a license file that lists the shots that were included and what the license is, and that additional usage may require additional fees. But I give my clients, as though they were theirs, internal marketing shots. They're usable for internal marketing in perpetuity, right? They're their shots to use however they want forever, but I license them to the artists. And when I shot Seinfeld for this particular casino, the local newspaper called me and asked to use a shot. Under certain releases, I wouldn't have been able to say yes. When I photographed Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin experience, they said to me, I said, "Look, I have all access because I'm shooting the meet and greet. Can I shoot from the wings as well?" No. You get 3 songs from the pit. That's it. He doesn't like people in the wings. I always set myself up for success. I kept my gear on and I stood in the wings like this. And inevitably, a tour manager would come up to me and say, "What are you doing?" And I'd go, no, I'm allowed to be here. I'm not photographing, but I have all access. And every single time they said to me, "That's okay. Go ahead, get some good shots." And I ended up being able to license like 60 photos to Jason Bonham because I did that. Certain releases would prevent me from directly licensing things to people. So that's kind of where I am like David. I don't see any reason any of these exist. If you want to limit where I shoot from or say no to me, say no to me. It is never to me acceptable to say that you get to use the shots. And if I forget, I'll just say it now. For example, somebody relayed to me that they questioned the Foreigner release that was in town recently. And we're going to get into that because one person got it bypassed and nobody else asked. But when they said, "Why do these exist, do you know," to the person with the camp, the answer they got back was something to the effect of, "Well, the band's been sued over posting pictures on social media." To which my response was, first of all, they probably haven't been sued. They probably had photographers go to them and say, "You need to make sure you give me credit or take it down." It was probably an intern that did it. And the way to fix that is not to take somebody's copyright, so that you can
Right,
post on
don't
Instagram.
don't steal the images. And then
The
you
way
won't
to
get
fix
sued,
that
you know?
is train your damn staff not to take my image off of a blog and post it on social media. That's not a hard thing. So here's where I want to go. Common reasons I hear for people signing these things. We're not going to drill down into what kind, although you guys can in your answer, but I just mean in general. Number one, I hear this one. They don't really matter, so I sign them. Go.
I'll let Marie take it first.
I mean, to your point earlier, like it's the same as like, oh, I'm not gonna read it, right? It's like it's a contract. Like it could matter. I don't think that was one thing I was trying to think about before coming on here is like, yeah, I don't think there's any like legal precedent of like an artist. At least I haven't found any of like an artist like suing a photographer, but you never know. If you're signing a paper saying I'm gonna do this, they could come after you, right? Like that's
Yep.
and that kind of goes of like it doesn't matter. And I mean, it matters for so many more reasons. It's like if you're signing it, you're setting a precedent, right? That's like anyone else who tries to fight it back after, it's like, well, someone signed it, right? Like
And
it's
a lot of the releases have a clause in them. I wish I had one in front of me because I keep whenever I have a release put in front of me, if I do for some reason sign it, I take a picture of it unsigned and a picture of it signed, and it gets stored with the pictures. Because I had somebody want to use one of my Roger Waters pictures for the cover of a book, which is a commercial use on the cover of a book. And I needed to know had I signed a release. But a lot of these releases have a clause in them that says, obviously, it is hard to predict the damage that can happen to an artist. And that's basically saying we can come screw you later if we want to.
Yeah.
David?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's never a problem until it is, right? And it's
Yes,
true.
yeah.
It's true that most of the time, sure, it's not going to be a problem. But why even put yourself in that situation? There's no reason to do it. And the thing that bothers me the most is that photographers, we are our own worst enemy, right? Who has the power in this situation? Look, Steve, you and I have talked about this in Norway. Right, the music photographer community in Norway, they all decided
glad you brought this up.
years ago, maybe 10, 15 years, 20 years ago, they all got together because I assume they all know each other. It's a small community. They communicated somehow, and all of them said, these releases are ridiculous. We're not going to sign them. And they basically boycotted the shows. And anybody who showed up and said, we have this release, all photographers who were going to shoot said, nope, we're not going to shoot the show. And they didn't shoot the show. And guess what? Now, every band that goes to Norway, they know they don't even bother putting a release in front of anybody. It went away because, like you said, Steve, it's a barter system. If you want the coverage, you have to, allow the photographers to do their job. And I will, to be fair, there are photographers out there who are, willing to sign things that they shouldn't sign. And there are, people who get approved for credentials who maybe shouldn't be approved to get credentials, and they're hobbyists instead of working photographers. And, that's okay if you can somehow, but for the most part, if you're there shooting a show, you're there to provide coverage for the band and coverage of the event. I should say, you're not providing coverage for the band. You're covering the event for the public. You're not covering it for the band. You're covering it for the public. And you should be allowed to do that. And if they don't want you to do that, like I said earlier, then don't credential photographers. It just drives me insane. And photographers do have more power than we realize. And if I know it's hard in the United States and probably in Canada as well, because there are so many photographers and everybody's it's like herding cats. I understand to try to educate photographers, but we do have the power. And even, I don't care how big a band it is. I don't care how much you want to shoot them, how much of a bucket list show it is. If it doesn't make sense for you from a business standpoint, then you just shouldn't do it. This is a business. I know it's fun. I know it's exciting to do, but I wouldn't, there's nobody who's going to do my taxes for free because they want to be an accountant, right? They think it's fun to be an accountant.
Yeah.
So why should it be any different in our business, right? Now, we may get to the point where we just realize, hey, music photography, maybe it's not a viable business anymore, right? That may come to fruition one day. It's certainly less of a viable business than it was 20, 30 years ago, 100%, right? But there are still people, myself included, and Marie and Steve as well, who do make a living doing this. But But we're careful about what we do. And the photographers who are not are going to find later in life, they're going to regret it. They just are. You're never going to be able to monetize any of that stuff again. You're not going to make enough money on each particular job to be worth signing over the amount of rights or restricting your own rights in the way that these contracts do.
And by the way, I've had somebody, I can't remember who it was, said to me that, your photos, your portfolio, your archive of images is your retirement plan, right? So
absolutely,
that's a key distinction. But somebody's going to say, and I just want to clarify, yes, Norway is smaller than North America. It's a lot easier to do this on a small landmass, and we're not going to do it here. But let me inject this into that mix. So I went to a show one time. It was Pat Benatar and Journey, and at the show. So usually if a release is really bad, they will send it to you by email ahead of time. So because they know you're going to say no, right? And that way they have time to credential somebody else. But for this particular show, they presented us with that's where I got that line. You're giving us a full commercial, worldwide, transferable, sub-licensable license in perpetuity was from this Pat Benatar release. And even the newspaper guy didn't say, oh, well, I'm here to cover for a job. It's part of my job. I have to. No, he called his editor right there on the phone and said, please don't make me sign this. And the editor said, yeah, don't shoot Pat Benatar. And here's the thing. The damn thing didn't matter anyway, because at that show, they had this ridiculous, you have to send your pictures within 24 hours to our tour manager, all the pictures, not just your selects. 2 weeks later, they're at the theater here in my town. That was 20 minutes away. This is 5 minutes from my house 2 weeks later. And I didn't shoot the show because I'm not going to sign the release. And a friend of mine that worked for the newspaper, brilliant entertainment reporter that's now with the LA Times, shot the show for the newspaper. And I texted her and I said, how was the show? I really wanted to shoot it, but I won't sign the release. And her answer was there was no release. It's 20 minutes from the venue where they had a horrible rights grab release. And 2 weeks later, they don't have a release. They don't need them, right? They credentialed photographers without a release. They don't need these things. Here's another, I don't want to use the word excuse, but here's another reason people give for signing these things. I'm not good enough. They're never going to take my shots and use them for the cover of an album or a t-shirt anyway. Okay, go, David.
with that attitude.
Yeah, David, they might not take yours, but they might take someone else's, right?
Which is the industry as a whole argument, which I'm a fan of, right? We can't kill our own industry and then bitch and scream that we're not getting paid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let me back up to the newspaper thing. I mean, yes, it is easier to deal with these things when you are, look, I was a staff photographer at the Miami Herald, right? I had a full-time staff photographer job. I was an employee. This was in the 90s. And I was under contract as an employee of the newspaper. And I would show up, and it's funny that you say they send the releases ahead of time when they're bad. I found exactly the opposite. With the bad ones, they don't want to send it in advance. They just shove it in your face right when you show up, and then you have to make it. You've already driven there, you've parked, you've whatever, you've
cheap trick.
Your schedule. Yeah, well, it used to happen a lot.
Yeah,
they do by email now. They do via email now, but yeah. They've tried.
But I had the advantage. Look, when you're working for a legitimate publication, and especially if you're an employee, I would say to the person giving me the contract, I'd say, I'm legally allowed to sign this. I can't sign anything like this. I'm an employee. I don't own these pictures, right? So I can't sign on behalf of my employer.
Right. That was a work for hire situation.
It wasn't a work. I was an employee, so it's technically not a work for hire. It's an employment, But so that's a different situation. Now, again, it's really none of the business, like you said earlier, of the band or the management to know what my situation is with with whoever's sending me to do the show. It's irrelevant, right? That's none of their business. It's hard enough for photographers to negotiate with the client. Then you also have to negotiate with the band, with these music contracts. So, whatever my deal is with the organization that sent me, that's my concern. I should have no issue with. Again, you can't. Here's one of my big problems with this is it is a slippery slope, right? And if as these things start happening, right, Could you imagine? And I guess we can imagine in today's world, it is very slippery, where look at politics, right? And we don't need to get into politics, but in general, as a photographer in Washington, D.C., and you're covering the president or you're covering Congress or something like that, they would love nothing more than to be able to say, oh, you can only photograph us this way, or we have to approve the images, or all of that. I mean, that affects very serious things. If you can only have pictures, and
Right.
you can never have them run in other places and never license them down the road, and you'd lose a whole generation of history if you couldn't license these images into the future. So, and the clients, the subjects would love that. Politicians would love that, but they can't do that. That's not the way the media works, right? You are there to cover for the public. You're working for the people, and it's the that's a sacred thing that should not be interfered with. And again, that's a whole other rabbit hole that we're not going to get into about the press today and all of that. But that's the way it really should be. And I know a concert is not the president of the United States, but you never know. You never know when something important is going to happen. What if you're shooting a show and, God forbid, there's a horrible event, there's a mass shooting or a bomb, or these things happen, right? If you've signed away your rights, the band owns those pictures, right?
Yep.
You've just made the only picture of a historical event, and you can't do anything with it without getting sued. That's insanity. You should
I'll go another way.
never be in that situation.
Let's go to when Dave Grohl fell and broke his leg. Let's say you got pictures of that, and it was a pre-approval release. They're not even a copyright grab, but a pre-approval release.
Yeah, they're never going to approve that.
The fact that the subject of press coverage, we are media deep down. We are journalism, photojournalism. Now, I have in certain forums, no names being mentioned, somebody will make a comment about, oh, I love the AI for removing this mic stand. And I'll say, look, that's between you and how you see your photography. But deep down, we're journalism. We have journalistic integrity requirements if we're going to really explain this to people. And to have the subject of coverage dictate how they are covered. So if you had a picture that could be amazing of Dave Grohl mid-fall going, right? That could be news. If they had to pre-approve them, you'll never get that shot out, right?
Of course not.
To let the subject of press dictate is not good. One of the other excuses, again, I'm sorry, not excuses. One of the other reasons that people give is, well, nobody's ever told me to take a shot down after I signed that I wouldn't use them or take them out of my portfolio. And
until
again,
they do.
Yeah, until they do. So being as how the Instagram connection, I want to talk about, I'm doing these anonymously, but I know who these two people are, that the quotes that I'm going to read, they are working photographers. One of these people has credentials well beyond music photography. And I know these people, through online. But here's one of the quotes that somebody sent me when I put out the Instagram request of, hey, is there anybody out there that's either signed a rights grab release or refuses to sign them? DM me. And here's what somebody said. And I want your guys' kind of reaction to this. I understand it from both sides. My question is, has anyone had a band or label try to enforce it? I see it as bands trying to equalize. If a photographer takes a photo, they own the image and can use it forever, sell prints, etc., but the band makes nothing off it nor has control. And I answered that on Instagram. I'm not going to go through it here. People already know what my answer is probably going to be. I answered that on Instagram and ended up apologizing, saying, sorry, I wrote a book. Like I exceeded the length of DMs on Instagram twice. Okay. But I'm curious, Marie, why don't you go first?
Yeah, well, I think that's the comprehension around it, right? It's not equalizing. I think for me, that's the type of release that really bothers me the most, is that, when it's editorial only, yes, with the law, we're limited, but there's still fine art prints. There's still down the line, or even a sponsor that wants to buy the image with them all released. There's still ways to make income off of it. But at the same time, if an artist wants to make income off of it, use it for commercials, pay me, it's pay me fairly. I'm not hired by the artist to be there. I'm hired by media. If they happen to like a photo. amazing. But it's when we get into those releases that say, you, the photographer, cannot do anything commercially with it. And that's why I think there's a bit of a gray area of like, but technically that means no prints, right? But then they take a license to do everything commercially on their side, on the band side. That's where you're telling me I can't make any money off of it, but you can make as much money as you want. Like it's not equalizing. It's shifting the balance like the other way around, in my opinion.
And let's add, I don't care what the band is, they can afford me. I'm just going to tell you right now. You can absolutely 100% afford me. David, what do you got?
Yeah, no, they can pick and choose from all the photographers and all the pictures from every show. They don't even have to take the chance of hiring somebody to shoot for them, right? I mean, obviously, if you hire somebody, you're going to try to hire the best you can, but at the same time, they have the advantage of just being able to look at everything that's out there and saying, oh, we want that picture, we want that picture. That's not expensive, right? So if they want something, they can absolutely license it. Photographers are generally not paid very well, right? They think we're making millions of dollars on these things. We're not doing it. It's not happening, right? So, but here's another thing to think about. I bet, and I'm not going to pick on any particular artist, but if you take some artist, whoever it is, and let's say they have these controls of like, oh, we don't want you to be able to do this. I bet you that they have a print of somebody that they love hanging at their house, right? And I bet you it was sold through the photographer, and it was not sold from the band, right? There's all the great stuff of Freddie Mercury at Live Aid, and all these beautiful Neil Preston photos and Lynn Goldsmith photos and all these historical documents. I bet you some of the artists that we know who have releases, bad releases, probably have a wall of those pictures from the 60s and the 70s. And that's because the photographers didn't have any releases back then, and they could sell them as fine art prints. Now, you mentioned about selling prints. There is, and again, like you said earlier, we're not lawyers, and don't take any of this as legal advice. But my understanding, the way I treat my business is there's a difference between fine art prints and just prints, right? So, selling in a gallery situation where numbered and signed and generally more expensive prints that are matted and framed, that's okay from what I understand. But selling $10 machine prints on eBay, thousands of those, that's not good, right? That's like a t-shirt. That's like an endorsement deal. You can't do that legally. And yes, they could sue you. And even without a release, they could absolutely sue you on that and would win. So now again, how much money is an individual photographer making off of that? Probably not a lot anyway, right? So I think the bands have unrealistic visions of what's happening, out there in the real world of these photographers. Now, there are some photographers who are very smart. Again, the Lynn Goldsmiths of the world and the Neil Prestons and these famous, photographers who were very smart about their marketing and their branding. But even them, they're not, I mean, some of them make good money, but that's the top 0.1%, right? And it's not, most photographers are just working people trying to make a living and just scrape by. And it's just not, I think it's just not what they think it is. So like you said, it's not a fair trade. It's not a trade-off.
No, it is not an
something
equalizer
that they're not getting. It's not even, not even close.
And let me add this on the fine art point. So I have a playlist on YouTube, or you can get them in the podcast download wherever you get your audio or video podcasts. If your app of choice supports video, this podcast is available in both. I have 3 different shows on copyright for photographers. I did the first one with the guys from the Copyright Zone, which is original Canon Explorer of Light, Jack Resnicki, and lawyer Ed Greenberg. We discussed all of that, including the requirements for fine art and the fact that you cannot just say, I'm a fine art photographer. You could lose that argument in court if there's no history that you've actually sold fine art. So go watch that show because he's a lawyer, right? But there are requirements, certain number, hand signed, hand numbered, etc. And the other thing I just want to make clear, because somebody's going to leave it in the comments, they'll leave it before they see me say this, but that's okay. Yes, the artists that have those pictures on the wall may not know that they have a release. Like a lot of artists, look, they're artists. They hire a team of people, a camp of people to handle the business side of things. And so that management team or that PR team may decide to implement something through the legal team, and they're not going to bother the artist with, by the way, we're implementing this, photo release. I understand artists may not know. Here's my argument to that though. I'm not saying it's going to change. They've got a lot of things on their plate. But I would argue if you're a creative that would get mad if I used your song on YouTube, and in your name, your management team is taking the rights away from another creative, I would argue it is kind of your responsibility to know. I understand you may not at this point, but I would argue that you should. Here's another one somebody said in response to my Instagram thing. I signed one for Foo years ago, but they were a bucket list band to shoot. I was snapping no matter what. I've done some commission that were rights grabs, but I was paid to be there by a record label or a magazine, and they signed the contract and they paid me. So it made no odds in the end because I still got paid. Now, the second part of that, I totally get, right? Again, I own the copyright for that price. The reason I'm able to give you that price is because I keep the copyright. But if you're going to pay me enough, yeah, you can take the images. But what about that first part? I signed one for free years ago, bucket list band, no matter what. I was going to sign it. I was going to shoot it.
I mean, in theory, no. Have I done it? Maybe. I can count how many fingers, but I get it. I wish I could say I'm walking away from this gig, but when it's really talking top 3 artists ever, that I think at the end of the day, it's like, it's as long as you're comfortable with yourself signing that, it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So I think I had tickets to the Rage Against the Machine reunion tour before it got canceled in Portland. And I was going to apply for photos. And I was thinking to myself at the time, what if they stick a release in front of me? What will I do? And I don't know I ever came up with an answer, because to photograph that band intact would mean a lot to me. I like to think I would say no. Sorry, David, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old man here, but I think
get off my lawn.
Yeah, I gotta get off my lawn, you damn kids. I do think, I'm sure when I was younger, I probably had a few bands like that I was like, oh my God, if I get to shoot them, I will die, and I will do anything, and I will pay them to do it. Right. But I think after a period of time, and Marie, you're probably there now. I mean, you've been shooting long enough that it's like, after a period of time, you get to the point where it's like, you know what? This is a business. And if I want to go to a show and enjoy the band, I'm going to buy a ticket, and I'm going to have a few drinks, and I'm going to go with friends, and I'm going to have a good time. And that to me is more fun than working a show, right? I love working shows. I love taking pictures, and I love having those pictures. But I've photographed a lot of bands, right? And everyone, there's a few that have died that I didn't get to do, that would have been on the bucket list. But for the most part, at this point, when I pull out my cameras, it's work, right? And right. I love the work, and I have no issues there. But cameras are expensive, and it takes time, and it takes away from my day doing other things, and yada yada yada.
And it takes a skill set.
Well, sure, yeah. So to me, I don't know. I mean, I think the only way I would do it is if it was working for the artist, where I would consider, and again, I'd have to be compensated properly. Yeah. I'd have to, if it was like, if I could work for the artist that was on my bucket list, I might do it for a little less money than I would for other artists. And that's a negotiation. I wouldn't give away the farm, but, I might be a little more willing to do that for a short period of time,
The problem is without
the extra access. It's just 3 songs from the pit and out,
right.
Without backstage or, a portrait shoot or something like that. It's just not worth it to me, right? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, as I'm listening, I also want to clarify one little thing. There's the ones I would be comfortable to sign are the ones granting perpetual license, whatever. Giving away my copyright, I don't care who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm keeping my photos. So I just want to add that, because for me, I still count them as it's not a rights grab because you keep your right, but you're giving. It's like the one time I did it a couple of months ago, it was a big rock band that was retiring, and you're like, okay, they've been around for probably 50 years. I've looked the exact same for about 50 years, if you know where I'm getting at, It's
I know exactly.
And again,
how did the makeup look?
Exactly. And in the release, in the release it says you're not allowed to take photos of them without makeup. And it's like, how's that going to happen on like the first two
Right,
in the pit, you know? But I love that it's there for like contingency. But it's like, and without going back to like, oh, it's never going to happen to me. I'm not good enough. I'm like, realistically, they've been on my bucket list ever since I started. They have 50 years of amazing photos from amazing photographers. What are the odds of like the one photo from like the little Montreal date? It's like it's on the final tour, but it's not the last day of the tour. That was like, okay, I think I don't love signing it. I wasn't like, oh my God, fuck yeah. Like, you know, I was still like, you know, but I was like, okay, I think in this particular scenario.
But what if during the show, Celine Dion comes up on stage and sings with them, right?
Oh,
that would be like a once in a lifetime photo.
But with that release, I still had rights to do whatever. Okay. They were taking, so it was more if they want to make a whole ass billboard of one photo, use it as like the cover of the DVD or whatever, that's like, then I would have been pissed because that would have been out like a thousands of dollars license. But it's like the rest, like still, so that's where I draw the line of like, if it's a bucket list artist and they grant themselves a full license, I keep my rights. Okay. Full rights grab, but I keep nothing. No.
Right.
Like that's,
and like you said, that's like one hand, right? The amount of bands that you would do that for, right?
Yeah.
We all know there are so many photographers that sign these things, and every one of those is not a bucket list top 5 band, right? It's just the numbers don't work, right? One thing I wanted to circle back, I took notes, a couple of things that I just want to circle back to. First of all, you talked about how musicians, I've always said musicians of all people should understand our plight more than anybody, right?
Yes.
Because they've been through the same thing. The bands have been screwed over by the labels and by the industry in general for generations, right? And they, at one point, were the little guy who was being taken advantage of and not given anything in return, right? Or very little in return. And so they, of all people, should know. When I actually have a chance to sit down and have a real conversation with band people and industry people, and I present it that way, they go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, you know? And it's like, now when you become big and all of a sudden you screw over the little guy, you're not seeing it, right? And then just one more thing about when the person was talking about the equalizer, right? The one point that I forgot to make is, and I said, photographers are not making that much money. How much money did the band make on that show versus how much money the photographer made on that show? I mean, we're talking multiple zeros at the end of that to change that, multiples of 100 or whatever, you know? So it's kind of crazy.
And all they have to say is, if we use your shot as an album cover, and there was a release I signed that had that in it. We agree, we can use it for social media, but if we use it for anything commercial, promotion, and they listed them, promotion, marketing, merch, whatever, packaging, we will pay you accordingly.
Yeah, we'll license it appropriately.
Yeah.
Even social media, I have a bit of an issue with, because if they post on social media, it lowers the value of the image, right? It's not a unique image anymore. It's out there, especially if it's a band that has millions of followers. That image has almost no value anymore after it's out there like that. So it ruins the value of the image. So I feel like people blow that off like, it's just social media, whatever. But no, if that image is unique, it's worth more. And that makes it less unique.
When I've had artists contact me, they say, I saw this one image. Can I see the other shots you took from the show?
Yeah.
Because again, you get uniqueness. And
they don't want that picture. That picture's already out there.
One thing I want to stress is, specifically with copyright ones, but it's really with any of them. Look, these things also aren't etched in stone. Like I say, 20 minutes away, they have a release, then they don't have a release. If they hand you the release that night, it's coming from, I'm making it up, but let's say a Live Nation rep. It's nobody in the band camp. Negotiating with them, unless they're going to text or call somebody, is impossible. In that case, you may be able to cross stuff out, say not accepted, initial it. I don't like making changes to anybody's agreement or legal document without them knowing in advance. But if they email it to you, you can negotiate these. This particular show I'm talking about in Southern California last week, the way I know about all this is I saw people post pictures, but there's one guy who was a friend, and he said back to the PR person, I'm sorry, but this release is just onerous. It's not acceptable. I can't sign this. I'll shoot the opening band sticks and then I'm going to leave unless you can waive it. And the PR person immediately answered back, no, they're not waiving it for anybody. Well, this person somehow was able to actually message the tour manager the day before the show and say, I really want to cover it. I'm going to be there, but I'm going to leave after sticks if, I don't get this waived. And the tour manager goes, yeah, no problem. We'll make sure you have a credential and we'll waive it. And I have had times where I've said, look, I'm not going to ask you to waive the whole thing, or I ask you to waive the whole thing and they say, we can't. Are there certain parts? And I'll say, you have to take out section 2, section 4, and section 7, right? Like Santana's release was 2 pages. It was bizarre. And that was one where specifically I saw people sign it without reading it. But look, if everybody at that show had said, we're not going to sign this, it's too abusive, they may have waived it for you too. And they just didn't. So here's the question before I touch on kind of the last subject, which is money, which we've kind of already touched on. If you had one of these put in front of you, and let's say hypothetically, there was no way for you to negotiate it, like you're at the venue, right? Would you, because I hear people say they do this all the time, the way I get around, you can only use it in the stated outlet is I don't put a single outlet. I put all KCAL FM and Steve Brazill, outlets.
Yeah.
That means my portfolio, by the way, right?
Yep. And social media. Yeah, exactly.
And social media. But would you guys ever, because I this is my age probably, but I have a problem taking somebody else's legal agreement and going, no, initial it and hand it in. And they don't know I did that. I don't know legally. I'd have to talk to a lawyer. Would the lawyer go, you can't do that unilaterally without their approval and them initially? I don't know. But would you guys ever try that?
I guess, I'm not even sure to your point that would hold up legally, but I think that's the surefire way to burn a bridge with someone. Like via email, absolutely. I've sent red lines with a little blurb saying, hey, I've fed my red lines to other photographers in town. Be like, if we all send it, we might have a chance it works through. But in person, I would feel very uncomfortable, because what if that person from the label doesn't see it that night, and then the day after they're like collecting them, whatever. Oh, this person shot, but they refuse half of the conditions, and I wasn't there to debate on it or negotiate or anything. For me, it feels too sneaky. And I think, if you're at that point, either shoot or don't shoot. It's if you don't have an opportunity to negotiate, changing the release on someone's behalf, when they're not there, for me feels very icky.
Yeah, and I personally agree with you. And I'll say these management companies and PR companies, they rep more than one artist.
Yeah, exactly.
David, you were saying?
Yeah, it's a little passive aggressive. I much prefer to be a professional and have a discussion with somebody, whether it's over email or in person. But you would have to make that decision if you want to shoot the show or not. Somebody has to collect those forms that night, right? And it may just be, an intern or somebody, but you've got to at least be able to tell somebody, look, I need to talk to somebody about this, or I just can't shoot the show, right?
Because they can get a tour manager, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And the only one that's been really bad for me was the Cheap Trick one. Handed it to me at the box office before I got my credential, and I wouldn't sign it. And they said, do you want your tickets? You can still see the show. And I'm like, I'm not going to do a Vanessa Franco and draw stick figures in the newspaper of the guy on stage because they didn't allow pictures. And I
have heard, I remember, back when I was the newspaper, other photographers who would sign a fake name. They'd write Mickey Mouse or something on the contract or whatever. And that's just making a mockery of the whole thing. And, I understand the point, but yeah, exactly. Be professional.
Yeah, be a pro. It's a business. So money making, and we're going a little longer. I apologize if you guys got to go. I hear people often say online, I want to get to a place where I can make a career out of music photography, where I can make money. And they say, I see them post that multiple times. Man, I really want to transition this. Or I see it in a forum where my goal is to transition into being a full-time tour photographer or music photographer and quit my job as a, whatever. But then they shoot for an outlet for free. Okay. Not going to judge you. And then they sign away their rights. So they also give away the product, right? And my analogy to that is that's betting on both red and black on roulette. You're betting against yourself. You're giving away your time for free and your product. Whereas really the better business model is you charge a nominal fee for the shoot. And then you hope that those pictures, you're not the work product, right? You're charging a nominal fee for your time to do the shoot, but it's the pictures that are going to work for the client, not you. And your goal is that that product makes you, money for the work that it's going to do. Wedding photographers charge a nominal fee for a wedding and the hours and hours they put in before and after a wedding, but they make most of their money selling prints. And another analogy I came up with, which may be really bad, is think about a painter. Painters sit in their studio and they paint artwork. They're not getting paid at all to paint that. Their goal is to sell the product. And your job, I would argue, is to sell, right? Most wedding photographers are selling. They're not just shooting and giving, right? You've got to explain to the client why your pictures are going to do something for them. There was somebody that runs, I'm not going to name any names. There's somebody that some people will know who I'm talking about possibly. And I'm going to get hate mail, but that's all right. I get hate mail anyway, so why not? There was somebody on Instagram that started their own outlet. And they've got a ton of followers and they have other people shoot for them. And they posted, hey, I'm looking for other new photographers for this particular blog. And I'm going to paraphrase, but I'm going to say the word quote because the gist of it is pretty much there. Hey, we're looking for music photographers. Like all media outlets, it's volunteer and all the shots will be exclusive to this site. And I thought to myself, you're a photographer that created your own outlet and you're taking the rights away from people shooting for you for free. And that is 100%, to me, not acceptable. So the reason I bring that up is David told me a story about a arena shot that he's got and that you've licensed it before, right, David? So these things do matter, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've not just from music. You said at the beginning of this isn't just about, for music photographers, owning the rights to your work is you do it for two reasons, right? There's two reasons. The first, the obvious one that you're talking about is monetary, right? It's money. It's if you want to make a living, you want to do this for a job, you have to be able to monetize the work. And the situation you were just talking about, the simple way to think of that is you have to get something out of doing the work. You have to get something out of it. What that is can be different.
Or it's not work.
If you're not right, it's a hobby then, which is okay. If you're a hobbyist, then you're never going to make a living at it, which, is fine. But you have to get something out of it. Either you're getting paid for it, or like the painter, you're banking on the fact that you'll be able to make money on that down the road, right? So again, getting back to two reasons to keep the rights to your work. The first one is money. And the second simply is your legacy. Look, I'm at that age where I start thinking about these things, right? I am. And this is something that I think about quite a bit. And it's, how are you going to be remembered and how is your work going to be remembered? And if you don't own the rights to any of that stuff, I have a daughter, right? She's 20 years old. Long after I'm gone, what if she wants to do a book of her late father's life, right? I don't want her to have to go to the estate of every artist I ever photographed and try to get and beg for the right to be able to do a book for her dead father, right? So by keeping the copyright to that work, yes, you can monetize it, whether it's, little by little as you go, or some photographers later in their career, they sell their archives, right? For big money, right? And if you don't have the rights to that work, you can never do that, right?
Right.
So there's that. And then, like I said, there's your legacy and there's how you will be remembered. And I bring up Lynn Goldsmith a lot because she's a very good marketer. She's a great photographer. She has so much great stuff from the early days of, the Springsteen and the Stones and all of that kind of stuff. And I've been to her gallery events and I've talked to her and she's selling these prints for thousands of dollars, right? And she wasn't doing that 40 years ago. They weren't selling for thousands of dollars. But 40 years later, that stuff, she owns all that. She has Springsteen, like at her house, right? I mean, they were dating at the time. Everybody knows that, but she's got this amazing archive of images and that nobody else has. So you just never know. And so it's
Yeah.
so important. So unless, like I said, look, I have clients that I work for, and I'm fortunate. My clients are fantastic. I don't want, I've been going off on a rant here. I don't want any of my clients to think that I'm not happy, because I absolutely am, because I've worked deals with every one of my clients that is a fair trade, right? Whatever they're getting in exchange for what I'm getting, it's a fair trade. And I think that I'm respected more because I'm willing to say that to them, just like you said, yeah, you can get these rights, but it's going to cost you more money, right? And I think, as any other business, if you walk into the Apple store and you want to buy the newest iPhone, they say, this is what it costs. And you don't say, oh, well, I should be able to get it for less than that. Well,
Yep.
no, you can't. That's the price. And we're the sellers and they're the buyers. And it drives me crazy when people allow the buyer to set the terms or the price. It doesn't happen in any other industry.
Right.
I'm Steve. I know you know the analogy I always make. Call a plumber and say, hey, my toilet stopped up and I'm going to pay $50 for plumbing. And if you even hear them laugh before they hang up the phone, it's ridiculous. It would never happen in any other industry. But for some reason, photographers, because our job is fun, which it is, and lots of people are willing to do it as a hobby and for free, because of that, we've given up some of that power to be able to negotiate on our own behalf. And, because they'll always find somebody to do it cheap. So if you have enough respect, I'm very fortunate. My clients treat me very well, and I'm well compensated for the work. I'm properly compensated, I should say, for the work that I do. And I'm very happy with that. But I've turned down plenty of gigs because they either don't want to deal with rights, or they just don't want to, they don't understand it, and they just want to own it and don't want to pay enough for it. So as somebody who is later in my career, I have been able to monetize that. And the picture you were talking about was actually a sports photo. When I worked for Sports Illustrated for about 15 years, and I own all that stuff, 100%. I own the copyright to all of it. Sports Illustrated has no rights to that. If they run it today, they still have to pay me for it, right? Which is how it should be, because they paid an editorial rate at the time, which was relatively low, but I own all the work. So there's one picture in particular that I have made a lot of money off of. And it's an obscure photo. It's not even like the game-winning catch at the Super Bowl, right? It's just a random photo at a random game that I went up and made a unique photo that nobody else made. And that picture's probably made me $25,000 over the course of, the last 15 years. And that's just one picture, right? So you just never know. You just never know. And you have to get something out of it. If you just, like you said, if you just go to a show and because it's fun and it's a band you want to see, just buy a ticket and go enjoy the show, But if you're working and you're producing images that are going to serve a purpose for somebody, you've got to get something out.
I agree completely.
And get off my lawn, you damn kid.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. We have people at different points in their career here, and I think that adds a lot to it. And I want to stress, when you're dealing with copyright, and I'm not going to go into employee or anything like that. Okay. Employees are different. Again, go watch my copyright shows that I did with the guys from the Copyright Zone, because we discuss all of this. But if you are a freelancer, if it is not something you've been hired by somebody to do, copyright transfer, copyright is a right. It's an actual right. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only right in the US Constitution. Copyright is a transfer. To do a copyright transfer, it has to be in writing. So if you're shooting for a venue or somebody and their opinion is, well, you're shooting for us, I own the shots. No, they do not. Again, exceptions to everything, talk to a lawyer. But if you are a freelancer being hired by them as a photographer, you own the copyright, and them thinking they own it is not the case. It has to be in writing to transfer that legal right that you have. And if it's something like a work for hire also needs to be in writing. Before we close out, and I've got something I want to do with you guys before we close out. Is there anything I missed bringing up that you guys want to add, or did we cover it all?
I do. I'm sorry, Marie. I'm going to let you jump in, and I don't want to take over this whole conversation, but I just want to make one comment, because I can hear the comments coming in now on the YouTube below of people who are much younger than I am saying, but you don't understand. Today it's different. And I
Right.
can't, me at this point in my career, I can afford to turn down the bad jobs. And a young photographer just looking to get into the business, I understand that. And I'm sympathetic to that. But at the same time, as I said, you've got to get something out of it. You can't just do it for free. Like you said, playing black and red. You can't do it for the client for free and give the band rights. That's just not viable. If you need to make money, do something else. Either photograph other things, photograph weddings, photograph other things to make money. And then the few shows you can do that's a worthwhile deal, do it. But if you think just doing a bunch of shows constantly is going to get you somewhere and you're doing them all for free, guess what? When you start charging money, want to charge money, they're going to cut you and go to the next free person. So you've got to be able to find those clients, and they may be far and few between, but you've got to, if you want to do music, you've got to find those music clients who do respect you and respect your work and are willing to pay appropriately for what you do. And then if you need to make money, be a waiter or do something else or whatever you need to do to support that. And slowly but surely it's compound interest and it'll build. And as you get better, as that muscle, you improve that muscle of being able to charge money, like you said, at least charge a little bit, even if it's not a lot of money, get used to asking for money and charging what it's worth and all of these things. And I promise you've got to take this from me, that I promise you, if you do it over and over and over again, it does get easier and it gets better and you find those good clients and you find your way. Just doing it over and over for free is not a way to get to where you want to get to. That's how I feel about it.
And Marie, before you go, let me just follow up on that thought. And that is because somebody also in the comments is going to go, okay, I understand what David's saying, but stop telling me to worry about an industry. I'm only worrying about me. And my response to that always is, but you're the industry, right? You can't say I'm willing to kill the industry and only care about myself, because if the industry dies, your job does too. Marie, go ahead. If there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I have a couple things. So first one, I think you just summed it up perfectly, right? It's like one pushback I hear often when I try to educate people that's like, well, I'm doing this for fun. I'm not making any money out of it, so it doesn't concern me. It's like, well, that's a whole other conversation. But even if that's your sense, like, think about everyone else who's doing it professionally, right? Like the people you look up to, the people like, when you sign those type of agreement, you make it a precedent. So, and you're, I was going to swear, that you're going to mess with people's livelihood.
You can swear all you want, my friend.
I know, but it's more, I know. But yeah, it's like when you sign those things, like you'll fuck with the livelihood of those people that rely on it to make an income. So if you're in your own little bubble and you want to be a hobbyist and not make any money of it, it's a whole other story. But you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting the industry as a whole, right? So that when you snap out of it, you're like, oh, I should probably getting paid for this. All those releases you've signed throughout the years, and it's becoming the new normal and everyone's doing it and you don't have a choice. Well, there goes your way of making money, right? I think that's definitely, pretty important. Second point, if there are people in the comments of like, yes, but those releases, they're always like so verbal, I can afford a lawyer every time, I don't even know what they're saying, because sometimes like they get into the legal jargon. Like one tip, and then again, I'm not a lawyer and it's not a lawyer, but one tip I found is put it in ChatGPT and ask it, like, what is it doing to my copyright? Like, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, because I find like English is not my first language. It's like, now I'm used to them, but it's like, so I've gotten some in like old British English legal that I'm like, I'm reading it and reading it and reading it. And I'm like, what are you saying? Like, I don't understand. So, and honestly, like, that's one of the things that AI can help us for. Copy, paste, ask what happens to my copyright, always good to verify someone else. Don't just trust the robot, but I found it's something that really helps, because that's where they'll try and trip us up as well, right? With those releases, it's putting terms that are a bit, or sentences or like conflict, like contradictory, and you don't really know where you're going. So that would be one tip. And then the last one is like more of a story, but I think, and it's pretty close, Steve, to the one you had about the two venues and it changing, is don't think that an artist is ever too big to push back. I have one story myself where Megadeth, pretty big band, arguably, sent a release, not great. You know what? Made some red lines, got a couple of friends that are also going to shoot it. They agreed to the red lines. Cool, fine, whatever. Couple of weeks later, I have a friend who's in Edmonton who's like, hey, I got this release from Megadeth. Like, do you mind reading it over? I often read them for my friends. So sends it to me and I'm like, haha, they've kept the version with my red lines, you know? So they've made it throughout. And I think, you know, full circle, because you mentioned her in the intro, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift used to have a really, really bad release back in the day. I know in Montreal, she got blasted in the local newspaper. No one went because the conditions were just horrendous. And you're thinking, it's Taylor Swift. Why does it care? I went to shoot her about last month, and I was fully expecting a release where I would have to like name my firstborn Taylor and that's it. And the release was fairly reasonable, you know? It was honestly fairly like limited commercial use, which then again, you know, by law kind of. They were allowing social media use, which is a bit more of a gray area, but also knowing they hire someone from Getty every night. They haven't used a single. The tour's been going on for like, 2 years, and they haven't used a single. But that was the only use they're allowing themselves was social with credit, which is like for having gone from, we'll take all the rights, we'll break your stuff if you don't listen to the rules. Like that release, like the 1989 tour, like go look it up. It's available. Like the Montreal Gazette published it in full to say, here's why we don't agree with it.
I think I have a copy actually.
So, exactly. And so we're like, 6, 7 years later, she's not gotten smaller. If anything, she's gotten bigger. And now, like, when I first got the release, I was reading it, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm comfortable with this. This is very fair in my eyes, you know? So I think for anyone who's like, especially if you're starting out, like, oh, they're so big, they're not, sometimes they won't budge, and like, whatever, fuck it. If they want, you know, walk away.
Right.
But like, there's no to be like, even big artists, like, if you explain it and you try and be reasonable, like, in some cases, it might just work out and you'll save not only yourself, maybe photographers that night or photographers in the future. So, you know,
think of it as a variable. When I remember when I was at a festival here in California and Cage the Elephant was coming up, and I hadn't planned on shooting Cage the Elephant, and I always shoot every opener. I love shooting openers. And I wasn't going to shoot Cage the Elephant, and then they stuck a release in front of me. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to sign this, but let me read it. And basically all it said was, we're going to let you shoot the entire set. You agree not to sue us if you fall and get hurt. Right? read them and think about them. My last thoughts on this, and then I have something. I know we're late, but I have something I want to do with you guys really quick before we close.
I need to do this. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry. I know we're late, and I know you're trying to get us out of here, but I need to say this. I love, Marie, what you said, and this is great advice for everybody. If you're a local community of music photographers, talk to those people, get to know those people. You all have power together. And it's generally, in my experience, it's usually the same people. I don't care if you're in a giant city like I am, like New York or Montreal, or you're in a small town. You probably are going to be in the pit with the same people over and over and over again. Talk to those people. Get to know them offline. Get to know them online. Communicate together. And you all can band together and say, hey, if we all decide that we're not going to sign this release and we're all walking away, guess what? You might get it waived. So that's a great tip. I love that you did that with everybody in your community. And I think every photographer should be thinking that.
Yeah, it's power in numbers. It's honestly the times we've gotten a release amended or is when 4 out of 7, and my friends call me as a joke. They say, oh, you're the flag bearer of like photo release, because I get a photo release. And I hit up everyone I know, but like, are you shooting it? Can we fight it together? And that's power in numbers. It's the same as the Norway example. I wish we could get everyone, but obviously don't always know everyone. But
one community at a time.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
Norway.
But that's how.
Yes. Be Norway.
Be Norway. That's going to be the new slogan. That's what I should title the show.
Hashtag.
We have a show title. Be Norway. All right. So that said, my final thoughts on this, and this to me is kind of the key of what we just discussed. People are not going to value you more than you value yourself. You can, but I'm going to say you can't. It's not logical to complain that you're not getting paid enough, and then you go shoot a show for somebody for $80. You pay for your own parking for $40 in downtown LA, and then you give the rights away to your images, and then you complain on social media, I'm struggling and I can't make a living at my music photography. Okay. You can do all of that, but trust me, it makes no sense. All right. You have to see the value in what you do. These bands can afford you. I don't even know you, and I'm telling you, these bands can afford you. And I would say to you, even the most small, broke local band can afford you. I had a local blues player who's now, his whole family's a friend of mine, call me up. I interviewed him for a TV show when he was 16 years old. His parents called me up and said, we'd like you to do some portraits of the band. We've got $500. His parents footed the bill, right? People spend money on things that further their career. If a guitarist needs new strings or a new pedal, they're going to buy it. And they may not need it. They just, oh man, I want that new pedal, right? A vocalist wants a new microphone. A drummer needs new heads. The band as a whole needs a PA system. Again, your job is to explain why your images are going to do work after the shoot. And so here's my thing. Charge something, anything. I don't care if you say, I'll do it for $25. I'd argue you're undervaluing yourself. But here's my point. Learn to talk about money. By charging something, by talking about money, if you're uncomfortable with it, which is an argument I hear a lot. I don't know what to charge and I'm uncomfortable. Okay, go to your community and ask them what to charge. Go to Toddy Young's Discord channel. He's got a whole sheet on, he's got a whole rate sheet on what people pay in the music industry for things. What Todd's built in that Discord channel is literally brilliant. Talk about money, charge something, and break down that wall that you've built of being afraid to talk about money. If you really, really don't want this to be a hobby, then you need to start talking about money. And one last thing before we go into this last thing I want to do. You had made the comment, David, that, a lot of those people, artists have photos on the wall. And we were talking about, if you're a hobbyist, that's something different. What's interesting to me is the people that say, well, but I'm just a hobbyist, but they follow the David Bergmans and the Christy Goodwins and whoever that are there. They got into it because they're a fan of music photographers. And they're going, well, I don't have to worry about that because I'm shooting as a hobby. Well, then you're burning the people you idolize, right? You can't say, oh, I love everything, Christy Goodwin does now on tour with AC/DC, but the house photographer for the Royal Albert Hall in London, and then do things to take money out of these people's pockets that you really like. No band is worth signing away your rights. So stop signing rights grab releases. I want to close out with something I do every show. I normally only have one guest and we're late and I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it because I think it's important to keep that consistency. So this is a speed round. For the speed round, I'm going to ask a question and you guys just give the first answer that comes into your head. New people first. So Marie, you go first. What's your top music photography tip?
If everyone goes right, go left.
Oh, okay. We're done. David, what's yours?
That's a good one. Oh gosh. I have a whole thing that's too long to get into, but about changing your exposure quickly in fast changing environments, about locking down two of your three exposure settings and only using one to be able to change quickly and adapt to fast changing light. It's a whole thing, but
and actually you talk about that in your workshop and it's fantastic. Biggest photo mistake you ever made or almost made related to photography, not life. David, you go first.
Biggest photography mistake. Well, I'll stay on topic. I mean, early in my career, I did a job for somebody. They hired me to do it, and I sent a contract because I knew that's what I was supposed to do, and I never followed up, and they never signed it. And then turns out they never saw it, and I did the job anyway because I didn't want to ask them about it. And then afterward, they got it and they freaked out. It was a whole misunderstanding. And have the conversation, have the awkward conversation first, up front. Don't be afraid to do it. That taught me that lesson that day. So that was a huge mistake, but something good came out of it.
Marie?
I have a good one. I applied for a show overseas and thought I would never get approved. So I traveled without my gear. And then I was there and I got approved. And I had to call my mom and be like, Mom, can you give me your entry-level camera so I can go and shoot something I just got approved for? No. So always pack your gear is the lesson from now on.
That's actually pretty funny. Favorite composition rule if you have one, Marie?
I'm a rule of thirds kind of gal.
David?
Learn the rules and then break them.
Okay. Favorite band or performer? David, you go first.
Sting. Easy.
Harry Styles.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Favorite drink, David? I know what yours is.
You know what? I know. I drink like a college kid. I'm a Captain and Diet guy. I'm a rum and Coke guy.
Okay. Marie?
Iced coffee, black.
Okay. And last question, favorite movie or TV show? Marie?
Oh, that's hard. That's hard.
David's
I feel like
already,
the
I'm
changes
watching
I've been
David
needed.
look down going, what the hell am I going to say?
I know. I have too many. It's so hard. I feel like one that I always fall back to and I'm always amazed and notice new little things is La La Land. So that's where I'm gonna go.
Oh, great movie.
Oh my
David?
God. I don't even know. I'm trying to think what I'm watching recently.
And you had more time than me.
I know, right? I don't know. I don't even know. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I mean, I'm rewatching.
See, and there are people who would edit this out, but I'll say I love
No.
hearing somebody
Leave
think.
Leave it. You know what? I'll tell you, one of the best shows I've seen in the last 20 years. I'm a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, and West Wing was amazing, but Newsroom was even better. There you go.
Newsroom is amazing. Long gone now, but if you have
Long
not
gone.
seen Newsroom,
Season
phenomenal show.
Season 1 of Newsroom is easily the best 10 episodes of a TV show I've ever seen. There you go. Got it.
And I will say, I never do this, but if you haven't seen Resident Alien,
Oh yeah, great show.
yeah,
Did
Resident
we talk
Alien.
about this? Did
Yeah,
we
you
talk
and I
about
did.
Resident
Yeah.
Alien? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you and I did.
Great
It's
show.
phenomenal.
Great show.
So, last question for the day, and we'll sign off. Is there a because I like giving coverage to some of those photographers
this
that
question.
people may not know about. Is there a photographer that you think more people should follow? Marie?
Yeah, I think so. One of my close friends, Susan Moss, she's the house photographer here in Montreal. One of the house photographers for the promoters and the big venues. And she does black and white like no one else. And she's such a legend here in Montreal, but I feel like her work deserves to like go beyond that. And definitely super underrated in my eyes.
David, what's yours?
Gosh, you know what? There's a young photographer named Aubrey Wise who has become a friend of mine. I met her on the country tours. She was working for Lainey Wilson for a while. Now she works with a few other artists, and she's a young person who is doing some good things out there. And she's a real good person, which I think goes a long way in this business. And so, yeah, I think Aubrey Wise, she's a good one to follow. She's going to be doing some good things in her career.
Marie, thank you so much for doing this. Where can people find you if they want to follow you? Your Instagram, it's different, I know, for you for Twitter X, your portfolio. Where can people go and find you?
Yeah, I think Instagram is probably the best way. It's where I keep everything up to date. Twitter is more rants, but you can find it from my website from there. But yes, it's Marie Goes to Shows. So you've got it. And yeah, I'm on Instagram all the time. So there you go.
And then the website, easy way to get to her website is tinyurl.com. It's tiny URL link, tinyurl.com/Marie Goes to Shows. And David, what about you? Where can people find you? Where can they find information on the Italy workshop, et cetera, et cetera?
I wish I had a great name like David Goes to Shows, but I do not. Just my name, David Bergman. I'm at David Bergman. Same thing. Instagram is kind of the main place these days. Link in bio has all the links to the Italy trip and my workshops and all that kind of stuff. So Instagram at David Bergman.
Okay. And then davidbergman.net.
.net. Yeah, I haven't updated that site in a while, but there are links to pretty much everything on that site as well. So,
yeah, not .com. If you go to .com, it says, I recall, real estate or something.
It's a realtor in Northern California who he's very nice. He had the .com like a week before I got it, like 20 years ago. And he's very nice. If he gets an email by accident, he forwards it to me when he sees that it's a photography thing. So at least he's very nice about it. But we have to meet one of these days. But thanks, David, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much to both of my guests, to David and Marie. I so appreciate you guys doing this. And if you like this show, please make sure that you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. You can find the show notes and all the links that we talked about in the description on YouTube or on the website. Behindtheshot.tv is the podcast. Find this episode. I've got everything there. If you want to follow me, it's at Steve Brazill is probably the easiest thing to do. And again, if you want to watch it as a podcast, you can get it in audio only format or video format wherever you get your podcast. The only condition there is not all places support video. So if you're on Spotify, you're going to get an audio version. But if you're, for example, in Apple Podcasts, you can get either audio or video. If you search for the podcast, you'll find both options in there. It makes it a little easier for you. Also, if you have any comments, if there's anything you want to share on this topic, throw it in the comments down below. And as always, I appreciate so much all the support for this podcast, everybody watching, all the guests that come on. Really, really, thank you very much. Make sure you join us next time as we try and get inside the mind of a great photographer by taking a closer look behind the shot.